Welcome to Brainish English Stories.
Daddy Taille had 3 daughters. Anna was the oldest, but she was hardly ever talked about in the family. Rose was the second daughter, and she was 18 years old. Clara, the youngest, was 15. Old Taille was a man whose wife had died, so he lived alone with his daughters. He worked as a boss at Mr. Leberman's button factory. He was a very honest man, respected by others, and did not drink or smoke. He was like a perfect worker. They lived in Havre on Angoulême Street. When Anna ran away from home, Taille became very, very angry. He even said he would kill the man he thought was responsible, the main clerk at a big clothing store in town. But after some time, people told him that Anna was doing well. She was saving her money wisely and was friends with an important man named Mr. Dubois, who was a judge. Her father then calmed down. He even started to care about how Anna was doing. He asked her old friends about her. They told him that she had her own furniture, her shelves were full of vases, and there were pictures on the walls. There were clocks and carpets everywhere in her house. This made Taille smile happily. He had worked for 30 years to save only 5 or 6,000 francs. Anna was not silly at all. One nice morning, the son of a rich man named Mr. Touchard, who lived down the street, came to ask Daddy Taille if he could marry Rose. Taille's heart started beating fast because the Touchards were rich and in a good place in life. Taille felt very lucky with his daughters. The marriage was agreed, and they planned for it to be a big wedding. The dinner would be held at Mother Giz's restaurant in Saint-Adresse. It would be expensive, but Taille didn't care. He thought it was fine to spend a lot just this once. One day, as Taille was going home to eat lunch with his 2 daughters, the door suddenly opened and Anna walked in. She was dressed nicely and looked very pretty. She ran to her father and hugged him before he could say anything. Then she hugged her sisters while crying and asked for a plate so she could eat with them. Taille was moved to tears and said many times, "That is right. Dear, that is right." Then Anna told them about her plans. She didn't want Rose's wedding to be at Saint-Adresse. No way. It should be at her house, and it would cost her father nothing. Anna had planned everything and arranged it all. She said, "There's no need to talk about it anymore. That's how it will be." "Very well, my dear." "Very well," said the old man. "We will leave it like that." But he started to worry. Would the Touchards agree? Rose, the bride-to-be, was surprised and asked, "Why wouldn't they agree?" "Just leave it to me. I will talk to Philip about it." That same day, she told her fiancé, Philip, and he said it was a great idea. Father and Mother Touchard were very happy about the thought of a free dinner. They said, "You can be sure that everything will be really fancy." They asked if they could bring a friend, Madame Florence, who was the cook from the first floor. Anna agreed to everything. The wedding was set for the last Tuesday of the month. After the legal papers were signed and the church wedding was done, everyone went to Anna's house. The Taille family brought some guests with them, including a cousin, Mr. Savatanin, a serious man who liked to think deeply about things and was always very calm, and Madame Lamondois, an old aunt. Mr. Savatanen was asked to walk with Anna because they were seen as the two most important people at the wedding. When they reached Anna's house, Anna let go of his arm and ran ahead, saying, "I will show you the way." She ran up the stairs, while the other guests walked more slowly behind her. When they got upstairs, Anna stood to one side to let them in. Everyone looked around in surprise, turning their heads to see every corner of this beautiful and fancy house. The dining table was set in the living room because the dining room was too small. Extra knives, forks, and spoons were borrowed from a nearby restaurant, and bottles of wine sparkled under the sunlight coming through the windows. The women went into the bedroom to take off their shawls and hats. Father Touchard, standing at the door, made funny signs and winked at the men. Daddy Taille, feeling proud of his daughter, walked around the rooms, holding his hat in his hand. He carefully looked at everything, like someone in charge at a church, smiling with pride at how nice it all was. Anna was moving around quickly, giving orders and making sure the wedding feast was going well. Soon, she came to the door of the dining room and said, "Come here, everyone." When the 12 guests entered the room, they saw 12 glasses of Madeira wine on a small table. Rose and her husband were hugging and kissing each other in every corner of the room. Mr. Savatanen kept watching Anna the whole time. Everyone sat down and the wedding meal started. The family members sat at one end of the table and the younger people sat at the other. Mrs. Touchard, the mother, sat at the right side of the table, and the bride, Rose, sat on the left. Anna took care of everyone, making sure the glasses were full and the plates had plenty of food. The guests seemed a little shy because the house was so beautiful and everything was so fancy. They all ate a lot of the delicious food, but nobody made jokes like people usually do at weddings. Everything was too grand, and it made them feel a bit uncomfortable. Mrs. Touchard, who loved having fun, tried to cheer things up a bit. When dessert started, she said, "Hey, Philip, sing us a song." Everyone in their neighborhood said Philip had the best voice in all of Havre. The groom, Philip, stood up, smiled, and looked at his sister-in-law, Anna. He wanted to pick a good song, something serious that fit the fancy meal. Anna looked happy and leaned back in her chair, ready to listen. Everyone else sat up straight, ready to pay attention, but also ready to smile if the song was funny. Philip announced the song, "The Accursed Bread," and raised his right arm, making his coat bunch up around his neck. Then he started to sing. The song was long. It had 3 verses with 8 lines each, and the last 2 lines were repeated twice. The first 2 verses went well. The song was about bread earned by hard work and bread gained through dishonesty. The aunt and the bride started crying. The cook, who was there, looked at a bread roll in her hand with tears in her eyes, as if the song was about her. Everyone clapped loudly after each verse. By the end of the second verse, the 2 servants, who were standing by the wall, joined in the chorus loudly, and the aunt and the bride kept crying. Daddy Taille blew his nose loudly, like the sound of a trombone, and old Mr. Touchard waved a whole loaf of bread above the table. The cook silently cried as she held on to the crust of the bread she was still holding. With everyone feeling emotional, Mr. Savatanen said, "Now that's a good song. It's not like the rude songs people usually sing at weddings." Anna, who looked touched by the song, smiled at her sister and nodded kindly toward her husband, as if to say, "Well done." Feeling proud of himself, the young man kept singing. Sadly, the last verse had words about the bread of shame earned by young girls who were tricked or led astray. No one sang along with this part about the bread, which was supposed to be eaten with tears, except for old Mr. Touchard and the two servants. Anna turned very pale and looked down, while the bridegroom looked around, confused, not understanding why everyone had suddenly become quiet. The cook quickly let go of the bread crust as if it had become dangerous. To help ease the awkwardness, Mr. Savatanen said seriously, that last part of the song wasn't needed. Daddy Taille, whose face had turned bright red, looked around the table angrily. Then, with tears in her eyes, Anna, trying not to cry, told the servants in a shaky voice, "Bring the champagne." Suddenly, everyone felt happy again and their faces brightened up. When old Mr. Touchard, who didn't notice or understand any of the awkwardness, pointed to the guests and sang the last part of the song loudly. "Children, I warn you all to eat not of that bread." The whole group, when they saw the champagne bottles covered in gold foil, joined in singing excitedly. "Children, I warn you all to eat not of that bread."